Hello, everyone, and a very good evening to you all. This is Shama here, your host for the evening. Absolutely delighted to welcome you all to the second edition of the Product Leadership Festival, the Product Edition. We are on the day 8 of the festival with a brilliant keynote session coming up and most thought-provoking sessions organized till the 22nd of May. The 10-day festival includes keynote talks, panel discussions, fireside chats, and masterclasses by renowned speakers from top tech companies around the world. So once again, thank you all for joining us and a very warm welcome to you all, and let's proceed. The Product Leadership Festival is organized by the Institute of Product Leadership. And as you can see on the slide, the data and design editions are scheduled for the upcoming months. And you have a chance to register for it right now and win exciting prizes as we progress with each edition. So for those who have missed out on the strategy edition or the festival organized last year, check out the chat window to watch videos of 50 plus speakers share their key learnings and career insights in product, data, design, and leadership. Encouraging you all to share the same with your friends and network and share the knowledge. Now, before we dive into today's insightful session, let me give you a quick intro to the Institute. The Institute of Product Leadership is Asia's first business school providing accredited degree programs and certification courses in product management, product leadership, data science, design, and strategy. The Institute has partnered with 3 universities in India and the University of Houston in the United States. The Institute was founded in 2012 with a singular mission of creating 10,000 product leaders in the country. Ever since, the organization has designed and delivered programs in collaboration with various institutes, universities, and corporates to the senior working professionals to help them make the transition into product leadership growth. The Institute has built and developed a community of over 2,000 plus successful alumni leading the product, data, and design teams across the world. You can find out all about the Institute and the programs offered on our website. Please check the chat window for the URL. Here's some exciting news for all the attendees here tonight. You have an opportunity to win a free digital course. The best asked question in tonight's session will get this reward. Please scan the QR code on the screen to check out an array of digital courses offered by the Institute. The winner will get to pick a course of their own choice. The Institute offers new 8 skill courses for every step of your career. Every course is built, curated, and designed by industry practitioners. Please check the URL in the chat window for further details. The Institute of Product Leadership is glad to announce the Atal Innovation Scholarship exclusively for the participant of the festival. The scholarship worth Rs 1 lakh is extended for the EMBA in Product Leadership program offered by the Institute. This is a limited period scholarship, folks. Encourage you all to scan the QR code on the screen and talk to our program counselor right away for more details and the next steps. So once our speaker for tonight presents his insights, we'll open up for questions. You can keep your questions ready. And as the session progresses, you can post the questions in the Q&A window. The session is being streamed live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So viewers on any of these channels, please post your questions in the comment section and we'll direct them to the speaker. Do not miss out on this opportunity, folks. Ask some really good, intriguing questions and win a free digital course. So on the final day of the product festival, which is the 22nd of May, we have organized an open conference day. Open conference is a platform for you all to be a speaker and share your knowledge and insights with the world. Aspiring speakers can submit their topics and the shortlisted ones will get to deliver a talk for 30 minutes. Alternatively, please scan the QR code on the screen and vote for your favorite speaker and help them win. If your chosen speaker wins, you win rewards too. Without further ado, coming to tonight's session, please allow me to welcome Mr. Sai Satish Vedam, the moderator of this session. Mr. Vedam is the Chief Product Officer, Senior Faculty and Executive Coach at the Institute of Product Leadership. He was most recently the Senior Director of Product Management at Oracle. Great to have you here, Mr. Vedam. Handing the session over to you.
Thank you, Shama. Good evening, all of you. I just want to, before we get to that session, wanted to acknowledge that we're all going through really trying times, especially in this country now. So, every day I speak to several people directly or indirectly, they are impacted by this. I really hope and wish that you all stay safe, take extra precautions, and I'm sure we can all get through this. So before I introduce, today's fantastic speaker, Jordan, I'd like to take a couple of minutes in essentially going through some housekeeping, some couple of announcements. As Shama mentioned, this event is streamed live on multiple platforms. So it's on Zoom webinar where you're all joining here. I see several of you joining through LinkedIn Live. It's also streamed on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So strongly encourage all of you to ask a relevant question on this exciting topic, especially very relevant for a country and a community of engineers who are aspiring or looking to move into product management and don't know where to start. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A box on Zoom webinar, not in the chat window, so that it doesn't get lost in the chatter. If you're joining us from LinkedIn Live, please ask your questions in the same thread. The team will pull off those questions and we will certainly take them to the speaker at the end of this session. So with that, it gives me great pleasure to invite Jordan Tigani. Jordan, if you're on, can you turn on your video and audio so that we know and we can hear you and see you as well?
Yes, I'm here.
Yep. Okay. Well, great. Welcome, Jordan, and good morning to you. So just I can go on talking about Jordan, especially on his engineering achievements, but I'll try to highlight the most important accomplishments in his career. Jordan worked for a considerable amount of time as a software engineer in several companies, including Microsoft, Pelago, and Mindset Media before moving into Google. As Google engineering team, he actually co-created an amazing invention and something that is very popular today, Google BigQuery. He was a founding engineer of that team, and then he took on the role of director of engineering there. Quickly, he moved on to the dark side, as he would say, the director of product management at Google. Currently, he is the chief product officer at Single Store. This company was called previously MemSQL, not MySQL, by the way. I'm sure Jordan would get offended by that. It recently raised about $80 million. And it's a fascinating product. I think anybody who comes from databases world would understand the innovation that it is bringing in. It's essentially focused on providing operational analytics by kind of separating storage and compute. Jordan also co-authored 2 books on BigQuery, quite popular books, by the way. But another fascinating aspect is he actually had, predicted with near perfect track record of who would win the World Cup soccer matches in 2014. Now, Jordan, did you beat Paul the Octopus record, or did you miss it?
I did. I beat Paul by 1. And in fact, when I was proposing the project, I had to promise that I was going to beat Paul the Octopus, which is very difficult to do. I think Paul got 12 right or something. It was pretty impressive for an octopod.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I remember those days when pretty much people decided what side to cheer on based on what Paul the Octopus did. But what's more fascinating on that project that you did is I believe you kind of opened up or open sourced all the models and the code for anyone to do it using large data sets. So that's fascinating. Now, the topic is really intriguing. Well, not so much because when I moved, I was an architect, engineering architect in Sun Microsystems. And when I moved into product management, my engineering colleagues had accused me of moving to the dark side. I did realize that it was a phrase from Star Wars at the time. So I kind of gave a pause and felt bad about it as well for several days. But I hope, my journey has been fantastic, and I'm sure you'll talk about how you made that happen. So Jordan, before we jump into it and hand it over to you, I thought we'll take a really quick poll of our audience to see their background and where they're coming from, so that you can emphasize on certain aspects of it or de-emphasize on certain things. So if we can bring up the first poll, and again, we're taking a slightly different approach here for poll questions, specifically for this topic. Which of the following statements best describes you? So folks, encourage all of you to go and tell us, what, instead of directly asking, are you come from engineering background, products background, strategy, or any of those things? The team thought that this would be an interesting way to ask that same question. Of course, writing code is not just a prerogative of engineers. I think these days, even any talented and curious minds can start learning and writing code, but predominantly as part of your job, right? So as you can see, I hope you can see the results, Jordan, in front of you. Can you? Yeah.
Yes.
Good. So we clearly see about 25% of them saying, at some point in time, I did write code. I'm fluent in it, but don't do that anymore, right? So that kind of indicates either the roles that they are in, where they moved from engineering or development into other roles. Super. So let's bring up the next poll. So that's the result. The final results is about 24%. Is what I said. Now, if you're not a product manager now, right, are you planning to or aspiring to get into that role, right? This will help us also understand, and hopefully the reason why you are here is because you want to know how to get there, right? Or you're interested in knowing more about it. So unsurprisingly, about 70% or 65% saying, yes, I'm aspiring to be a product manager. And I'm currently not pursuing a professional certification, which is also not surprising. Many people that I've known, at least in my career, have become accidental product managers and kind of spend time in going through the ropes. Super. Thank you for that. Let's take a quick last poll. So clearly in this one, dominant folks who are joining here are stating that they are aspiring to. What role, now for those of you who are in product roles, and I'm assuming at least some of them are, because this is a product edition, and we've seen a lot of product managers join in the last 8 days. And by the way, if any of you are joining for the first session, welcome. But I see several of you have been, joining multiple sessions, so I'm glad to see you all here. And on this poll, we're seeing many of them seem to come from engineering. Again, not surprising. I mean, it's not at all surprising, given the large contingent or constituents that we have in India in, product development, engineering services, mostly engineering roles. Super. Again, thank you so much. So hopefully that gives you some insight into Jordan, into the audience, the type of audience that we have. Over to you. And once you go through your talk, then I'll be monitoring the questions on different channels and we'll bring it. Take it away.
Great. Thank you very much. I just wanted to start out by saying, thank you for having me here. I hope everyone and their families and their loved ones are safe in this difficult time, and hopefully this can at least give you something to think about, ponder about for a little bit. Let me just share my screen. I'm going to talk about kind of my path to product management. There are lots of paths to get there. There are lots of reasons to get there. I will talk about mine because that's the one that I know. But I can also try to give a little bit of color about what things I've seen work, what things that I've seen not work. So I start with my path to PM. A little bit about my background. You had a great intro, but I did want to just sort of highlight that I was I don't want to say I was a real engineer. I was most of my career I identified with software engineer, and that's the way I thought my brain worked. That's the way I thought my brain was wired. I was an individual contributor for most of my career, working on some really interesting projects. I was really lucky to be part of some really pretty extraordinary products. I guess the startups that I was with early I was not so lucky. They didn't work out as well, except in providing some experience. I spent a few years in management. I kind of bounced back and forth between management and individual contributor. as well. And I think that the management actually started to give a little bit more perspective that was really useful in becoming a product manager. And then about 4 years ago, I made the switch from BigQuery engineering director to BigQuery product management director. And then about a year ago, I switched to single store, and I left Google, and I became the chief product officer in charge of the engineering and product team. So this was kind of actually a great opportunity to use, I think, both sides of my brain. When I decided to become a PM, or at least I was thinking about becoming a PM, I first talked to some friends. I had a friend at Facebook who made a similar transition, and he started out as he was an engineer, an engineering director, somebody that I'd worked with at a startup, and then he became the PM director for photos at Facebook. And I said, hey, what's up with this change? What's up with this move? That seems super interesting. And he said, like, look, it's a way to get skills that you can't get elsewhere. You might not want to do it forever, but it can be incredibly valuable in your career. The engineering colleagues that I spoke to, they were the ones that said, dude, you're joining the dark side. What's up with that? And I think they didn't quite get it. But that was okay. I talked to my VP, and he said, it will complete you, which, to be honest, is probably the kind of thing that Darth Vader would say. But I think what he was going for was that, if you want to move into senior roles and executive roles, if you just have the engineering side, you're kind of missing a big piece, and having the product management side adds some business focus, adds some strategic focus, and that can really help you move up. And I think if I look at my career, my next step was then to a C-level executive, running a large portion of the company. When people make decisions, they often don't do it for great reasons. I would say my primary reason for switching was actually that if it wasn't going to be me, if I didn't do the job, then somebody else would do it. And I was terrified about who that person would be. I was on a project where I had a lot of kind of personal involvement in. I was quite proud of where we had come, and I had a vision for where I wanted to go in the future. And we were hiring for a PM director, and I was part of the interview loop, and I was interviewing these people, and I'd be like, wow, if this person becomes the PM director, this would be disastrous, because they just don't get it. They don't get what we have built here. And so I was like, well, I might as well do it. And, to be honest, it was great for pushing myself out of the comfort zone. Like sometimes, you do a job and you get good at the job and you enjoy the job, but you're not learning as much as maybe you used to, when you started. So, the timeline of the transition to PM, the first year, I would say, honestly, was sheer terror. It was like, I don't know if I can do this. This is so much stuff coming at me so fast. I am just trying not to melt down. I'm trying not to get fired, to get yelled at, to get relegated to some other position. But the learning rate was I think the highest of my career. The amount of stuff that you have to learn, you have to ingest, and the breadth of it is different. So I had engineering roles where I jumped in as a college grad into working on the Windows kernel. They had no source level debugging. It was all basically assembly level debugging, but at least that was kind of narrow and focused. As a product manager, you have customers, you have sales, you have marketing, you have all these new functions that I had never dealt with before. You have all this new terminology and these new people and these new requirements, and executives are now hammering on you for things. And it's not for the faint of heart. And I would constantly feel about like I was behind, and I was being reactive and not proactive. After about a year, I felt like it took about a year to really feel like, okay, I'm starting to I can keep up. I can, I'm not drowning. I can handle this, and to start to be proactive and think, what is the organization? What should it look like? What should we be doing? What should we be improving? Rather than trying to put out fires. And then by the second year, it was like, okay, I can do this. It felt a little bit comfortable. That doesn't mean I wasn't making mistakes. I think as part of a PM is you're going to make mistakes. I think the luxury of an engineer is sometimes you feel like all your decisions were right because all your technical decisions, you can sort of build anything. And as one engineer friend says, it's just code, you can build it. But there's a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong on the product side. And year two was starting to be able to mentor others, and that may feel a little bit early in the only being 2 years into a PM journey. But I think sometimes they say that if you really want to learn something, teach it. And I think that also helped me kind of solidify what actually it means to be a PM. If it sounds like I'm making it seem horrible, I don't want to necessarily do that. I want to make sure that, but I also want to make sure that you shouldn't go into it lightly. So I learned a lot from my colleagues, and if I look at when did I was thinking when I actually made the switch, which is a few years ago to PM, but really kind of my path to being a product manager starts earlier than that, and actually starts kind of at the beginning of Google BigQuery. So I thought I would spend a little bit of time talking about that. So in 2008, we had 8 engineers in a room. We were given a task by our site director, which was build a data marketplace. And if you're not familiar with a data marketplace, if you're not familiar with BigQuery, BigQuery is not a data marketplace. These 8 engineers got in a room, no product manager, and we decided we were going to build something different. We were going to build a query engine. And obviously we had no revenue, but we're full of enthusiasm, hubris, etc. 7 years later, we kind of grew to about 60 engineers. We had a product manager now, but we didn't allow that product manager in the room when we were making decisions about what projects to fund. We were scared that this product manager would, because of their, silver-tongued ability to influence, change what we knew was right. And we were still in the single digits of annual run rate in terms of, how much money we were making, single-digit $1 million. 5 years later, a lot more engineers, 12 PMs, and I think we had really, by this point, we had really started to embrace product culture and become a product-led team instead of an engineering-driven team. And is not allowed to share any revenue numbers, and it's been a while since I left, but it's in the ballpark of $1 billion in run rate. So certainly a successful company, a successful product, even for Google. But it took a long time. It took 13 years, and you wonder, like, if we'd had better product management, better product direction, could we have done that? Could we have done that sooner? So, to start out with from the early years, and some of the things that I learned that became important in becoming a product manager. The first one was when we were originally started, it was 8 people, and it was very non-hierarchical. And so we were all trying to figure out what we were going to build, how we were going to build it. We kind of knew the basics of what we were doing, but but none of the details, and it hadn't really started to coalesce. And I had an idea, other people had an idea, and so one of my colleagues, was really actually good at this, and I was able to learn a lot from him about how do you influence without authority. So none of us had authority over the others. There was a tech lead, but the tech lead was really sort of standing back and sort of kind of as an experiment, seeing what would happen. But if you want your vision to get built, how do you make that happen? And how do you make it happen if you can't just tell somebody to do something? Soon thereafter, we launched the product. Product was going pretty well. We did a lot of support via Stack Overflow, and Felipe was one of our developer relations people, and he really helped teach me, through Stack Overflow, to listen to these people, and like that every problem that these customers have are, there's somebody trying to do their job, and they can't do their job because your product is not doing what it's supposed to do. And when you really kind of can internalize that and you can feel for the customer, I think it really helps you kind of clarify and solidify what should the product be, and how do you make that person happy and able to do their job. I did write a book on BigQuery. I wrote 2 books on BigQuery. And when I started, I was not a good writer. I'm not sure that I'm a good writer now, but I know that I definitely wasn't a good writer. Writing stressed me out. If the idea of writing a 2-page document was actually kind of terrifying to me. And I don't know why I agreed to start writing a book, but it's one of those things you just get started and you put one foot in front of the other, you put one word in front of the other, and next thing you know, you've got a 500-page book. But Siddharth, who was my co-author on that, really helped me kind of find my voice as a writer and be able to write comfortably. And as a product manager, it's incredibly important to be able to write well. And I think if there's probably one skill that you should invest in if you want to be a good product manager, I would say that it's writing. We had one of our customer engineers, one of our sales engineers, who was really focused on BigQuery. At the time when Google Cloud was so small that basically salespeople covered the full range of products, but one person really got it, and that was Tino. And one of the things he recognized was that the way we were pricing and packaging BigQuery was actually not working for enterprise customers. And so Tino, as a customer engineer, helped us devise this new pricing program, and that was really the key to unlocking the growth of BigQuery, in particular for enterprise customers. And that was one of the things that the thing that it taught me was the importance of pricing, the importance of packaging, but also that you should listen to folks in the sales side, and also that sales engineers often make great product managers. He didn't become a product manager on BigQuery for another few years, but he became one of our best product managers. Then there was another thing that happened a little bit later, which is originally BigQuery, the SQL language that it used was very custom, and it was quite awkward. I was convinced that it was fine. I was convinced that, hey, people can figure it out. It's not a problem. A lot of the voices internally were like, no, we need to use ANSI SQL. I fought tooth and nail against it. I lost. We ended up implementing ANSI SQL, and in retrospect, I was entirely wrong. I was pushing really hard in the wrong direction, and so kind of the lesson I learned from one of my colleagues, which Dan, who became tech lead for a while of BigQuery, was that you're going to get it wrong sometimes, and you also need to make sure that you kind of approach every interaction with humility, because you might be wrong. As absolutely certain as you think you are, you might be wrong, and so you have to sort of take with a grain of salt. Kind of then the next stages of BigQuery, when we actually started to get some good growth, we had a good PM for a while. He then left to found his own company, but this may sound silly, is that like I had never interacted with a good PM before, and I didn't recognize what a good PM can really bring to the product in terms of clarity, in terms of understanding customers, in terms of helping motivate, et cetera. So Juke was great on that. Kind of then one of my first steps towards actually going down the path of a PM was, as a kind of a senior engineer on the team, one of the things that you're responsible for is growing leaders, and so I thought, well, how do I grow leaders if I'm the one that's doing all the designing? And of course, but if I'm not designing it, then what is my contribution? So one of the things that I did was, there was a big feature that we needed to do, which was partitioning. And instead of writing the design, I had a design in my head. I wrote a PRD, and a PRD, is one of the kind of key tools of a product manager. But by kind of getting the PRD, giving that to one of the people on my team, then he was able to take that and build the design. Actually, his design was way better than my design would have been, which is another lesson to learn. He's now one of the principal engineers, basically the top engineers on Google BigQuery. But I think the process of aligning on what are the requirements, gathering those requirements, was a really powerful one, and the recognition that if you can do this well, you can really kind of be a multiplier, a force multiplier, because you align the requirements, and then kind of you unleash the creativity of the organization. There was a fight that I had with one of our product managers, Chad, who was convinced that we needed to be more date driven, and there was a problem, which was we just said no, that's not the Google way. The Google way is you ship it when you're ready. And I was wrong. Chad was right. It was and not that you have to be completely date driven. And I think we ended up kind of at a bit of a détente. But if you have enterprise customers, these are people that are building their business on your product. You can't just tell them like, yeah, we'll ship it when it's done. It might be in 6 months, it might be in 18 months. And there are kind of tools you can do to help with that. We had a very engineering driven culture, and Dan, who is one of our PMs, helped us kind of make that change to valuing kind of PMs, and kind of letting it used to be that we would launch stuff by kind of announcing it on Stack Overflow as like sort of as a self-answered question, is like, hey, or somebody would ask a question, how do you do this? And then we say, hey, we have this new feature. The product managers were sort of horrified. It's like, no, like we have to do, there's marketing, there's communication, there's documentation, there's all this stuff that like a proper product is supposed to do. And so I you kind of had to learn to let the engineers not drive the bus. And that was hard for us, but it was, part of becoming a mature product and a mature business. There was a guy that I kind of, I had met. He was a founder of a BI company, or a data platform company. His name is Lloyd, and he's the founder of Looker. And I started working with him, and because he was pushing the product in really, really interesting ways. And so one of the benefit things I learned from him was just once you have a partnership and you can actually kind of tie two products together, each one can be bigger than and can grow faster than either one of them could on its own. Eventually I switched into product management. I talked about that, and there was just a lot that I had to learn. I had to learn how to like PM, how to talk like a PM. So Vinay, one of the PMs on my team, kind of helped me. He was MBA. I think he was Wharton. Like he really knew his stuff, and it actually kind of helped me that I was a PM leader, not an IC PM, because otherwise I would have been thrown even more into the deep end. But he was able to help me. one of the engineers on my team actually helped me with this, which was, you know, that when you're a PM, even if you know how the technology works, don't try to be an engineer. Because my first PRD, saying, hey, we should build this product. The way I wrote it was a design doc, and I was like, this is how the design is. And then like the engineers, they crapped all over it. They're like, what do you, it's like, even though I'm like, a month ago I was one of you, and now they all of their defenses come up, and recognize that PM should describe what to build, and this is what it should look like, and these are the things that it has to have, but don't try to tell them how to build it. That took a long time to internalize. The other thing was that there's a big organization out there. It's not just I used to think it was just it was engineering, and then there was sales and marketing and these other functions. And these are big organizations, and these are as much or more responsible for the success of the product than the engineering. And that was also a hard lesson to learn. Emily on my team also, she helped we collaborated on this PRD for BigQuery Omni, which was our multi-cloud version of BigQuery. And she was just really good at getting to the essence of what was necessary, at telling a story with the PRD. And I learned a lot about storytelling and how that can be used to get the product that you want done eventually. And then finally, Saptarshi, who was the head of marketing, but then he actually went to a competitor and as the director of product, and he left Google, and it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I said, hey, why are you leaving it? The world is on fire. Like, who knows what's gonna happen? And he said, well, the time of great turmoil is also the time of great opportunity. And he made a great move, and I think that it also helped empower me when I made my move a few months later to MemSQL, which then became Single Store. All right, so enough kind of about me and that history. I want to talk a little bit about what is a PM, because maybe to most people in this room that's obvious. To me as an engineer, it wasn't obvious. I would always say, well, what do PMs do? Like, I didn't understand it at all. And I make a couple caveats, is that every PM is PM at Microsoft is different than Google, is different than Facebook, is different than kind of elsewhere. And so this is sort of like one version of a PM. Also, PMs for business to consumer can be really different than PMs for B2B or enterprise. So I'm gonna be describing this from my background, and yours may vary. So often people say that a PM is like a mini CEO, and that's not really true, because the CEO can tell you what to do. CEO can tell you, go do X, Y, and Z. This is the vision, and this is the direction that we're all marching. And a PM can't do that. A PM has to operate a lot more indirectly, and I think that's actually a value. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. They're not a project manager. Some places actually conflate the two, where kind of like a junior PM is kind of a project manager, the one that kind of tracks the schedules and keeps everybody on track. And I think that actually kind of leads to people getting too stuck in the weeds. They're not a program manager, just another PM term, and they're not an engineer. I think just once you kind of move over to the dark side, you should stop saying, you should never say to an engineer, well, I know how to do this because I'm an engineer. A, they won't believe you, B, they will get angry at you, and C, it's not your job anymore. It's their job. It's your job to get the most out of them, and and trying to one up them on who is a better engineer or who knows more about some programming language or something is probably not going to work out well for you. But so what do engineers think that PMs do? I mentioned I didn't know what they did. To be absolutely frank, for a long time, I didn't have a high opinion of PMs because I had worked with a couple of mediocre PMs or non-entity PMs, and I saw kind of two flavors of PMs. There was either products or PMs that couldn't get stuff done, and those were just sort of like whatever, you can ignore them, or PMs that could get stuff done but they got the wrong thing done, and those were actually toxic. Again, like a great PM can make a great product and can create a great product out of whole cloth and can do incredible things. And but I just the often from the seat of people in engineering, like they don't get it. And I think sometimes it's fine. Basically on my team right now, there's some people that engineers that don't quite get what PMs do, and they don't sometimes like the PMs, but it's fine. They don't have to like the PMs, as long as the PMs can be effective, because a lot of the things that PMs do are things that engineers don't actually see. What a PM's job is really to figure out, what are we building? What is the product? You get the product built. So figure out who you have to, get in line, what kind of stuff has to happen to get the ball over the goal line. And then they, make the product successful. I mean, it sounds easy, but but there's a lot there, but they're really responsible. So, I mentioned that they're not CEOs. They're responsible for making the product successful, just like the CEO is. And if the product is not successful, then as a product manager, it's your fault, because you should have been able to do something to figure out how to solve that. And if it succeeds, it's not necessarily, you don't always get the credit, but I think it's, that's one of the reasons that it can be a lot of pressure. So what makes a good PM? Customer focus, really understanding your customer empathy, understanding the engineers and the technology, having if the engineers always roll your eyes when you say something, then you're going to have a hard time actually getting something done. You need to understand the market. You need to understand the opportunities. You need to understand the movers. You want to, in the old hockey analogy, you want to, skate where the puck is going rather than where the puck is now. You want to triangulate where the market is going to be when you come to market, rather than chasing after competitors. And it can be really tempting to chase after competitors, because everybody says, hey, look at so-and-so, they're doing this great thing, we need to build this feature. And but if you do that, you're always going to be 2 steps behind. They've got to have great product intuition. This is something that's really hard to interview for, but it's just because it's a qualitative thing. It's like, how good are your ideas? Like, how could you look at something and be like, come up with something new out of whole cloth? And they got to get something done. And I've heard this called sometimes high agency, but you gotta be the kind of person who can really who doesn't stop at obstacles, like who figures out clever ways around the obstacles. They bust through the obstacles. They find people to help them around the obstacles. But sometimes some of these these types of people, they don't even necessarily see the obstacles. They just get through them. So if you're an engineer, what kind of engineer is going to make a good PM? Well, they should understand customers. They should often engineers it's also going to make you a good engineer to understand customers. So I think that's just a good thing. Good writers, you have to be able to persuade people through writing. Again, this is also being a good engineer. Good engineers are often have to be good writers. Good presenters, being able to persuade an executive or a customer or somebody to sort of buy into what your vision is, because really it's a you have a when you start out with a product, it's just a vision, it's just an idea. You got to be able to think broadly. Sometimes, especially as an engineer, it's easy to get lost in the details. And sometimes it's, there's kind of sometimes a type of person who will step back a little bit and be like, hey, well, this thing over here is like this thing over here. So maybe if we did these things, we could do this once and we do it right. Those kinds of people can often become good PMs. And also just the same sort of getting things done. You see those, and you see that in engineers, the same sort of high agency people that like bust through problems. Oh, this team doesn't have this thing ready, or like I need this. So some people will sit and wait, and it's like, well, I can't do that, and other people will be like, well, they'll figure out a way to get it done. I think one just key thing here is that none of these things are innate. They all can be learned. I was not good at any of these when I started my career, and by careful work and hard work, you can get good at these things. So as a Eng to PM, you're going to have some superpowers, and these superpowers are going to make you, you're going to have advantages over other product managers, and it will enable you to build great products. The first is you really understand the technology. You really understand how far you can push the technology and what kinds of things you can do with the technology that other PMs are not going to recognize. So like if you understand the technology, that this something is possible, and maybe even the engineers don't know it's possible. You have firsthand experience with customers in a different way. You see kind of if you're sat side by side debugging with them, you see their kind of real pain points. I remember one time there was a CTO of a company called me in, on-site visit, and he kind of tells me about how terrible the product is, and he's just trying to use it, and he kind of showed me this schema and like this JSON file, and I'm like, there's a missing comma here. And he's like, oh, it worked. It was great. But that was a learning experience. And like, that's the kind of like engineer to engineer experience that you sometimes get that helps you, help you understand what kinds of things are going to be frustrating for your customers. The other thing is you'll have the trust of the engineers. You start out with the trust. You can abuse that trust and you can lose that trust, but that does help when you want something out of them. But there's also things that are going to hurt you. As I mentioned, if you try to design rather than just say what it should be, then that's going to cause an organ fit rejection. The other thing is that as an engineer, it's easy to associate cool with like a product that you should build. Like just because you can build something, just because the technology is cool, doesn't mean that there's any market for it or any viability for it. It doesn't mean there isn't, but you shouldn't build something just because it's cool. The other thing is, as an engineer, your perspective on the product is going to be different than the user's perspective on the product. And sort of like I'm a database person, and as a database developer, like I kind of see what happens inside the database, but not as much like what happens. Like, so even sometimes the person they're using is a developer, but their experience with the product is a lot different. And if I assume that the customers are like me, then that is, that can be a recipe for bad things happening. Just another one, heat is not light. You want to, light is not heat. Sometimes it's easy to, like, when moving to PM, easy to fill your days with stuff, with meetings, with things that are going on. You're like, yeah, I'm kicking butt. I'm going to all these meetings. I'm talking to all these people. I'm talking to all these customers, but you're not actually getting anything done. And that's one of the hard things about becoming a PM. And the other is hubris, is just if you think that you're awesome because you know how all the tech works and you're so much smarter technically than the other PMs, then you'll blind yourself to what you have to learn from those other people. So what does the world of a PM look like? Well, there's engineering worldview and a PM worldview. So as an engineer, the engineers tend to think, well, if we build the technology, that's really all we need to do. We need to build the technology and they will come. As a PM, you kind of know, well, it's not so much about product, the building technology is really, you want to find product market fit. You find product market fit, and then you're golden. Like that's when you kind of your growth rate starts to take off, and then you can sort of almost sit back a little bit. As an engineer, you tend to believe that, hey, if you're going up into a proof of, if you're going up head to head against a competitor, the competitor is going to choose the best technology. That's often not true. That's often the people choose the technology because, their cousin chose that technology, or because, their CTO had bet on some other technology and they don't want to lose face by picking something different, or somebody else offered a big package deal that you couldn't possibly offer. There's lots of moving parts to it, and it means you should also respect the people who are on the other side, and there's a big world on the other side. And I think that, another one is just that, engineers tend to think like, okay, well, if there's a problem, the thing that we do to solve the problem is just we move faster. And just for a product person, if you got to make sure you're moving in the right direction, because if you're not moving in the right direction, it doesn't matter how fast you're going. Then you just think about the product life cycle for an engineer. Design, implement, debug, launch, maintain, eventually deprecate. PM is actually different. You have a couple of things that you start before engineers have even started designing. You gather requirements, understand what is important. Coalesce is removing ambiguity from the system, because often when you start gathering requirements and you can get alignment, and people are like, yeah, this is great, we're all going to do this. And then you actually think, you realize that, well, when I say this word, this other person says this word, we actually mean two different things, and we're not aligned at all. And so it's an iterative process. You kind of have to get to clarity on what you're actually building. Then you launch the product, and then it's product discovery. So it seems weird that a product discovery would come after launch, but there's a iterative process that happens until you find product market fit. You're going to have to, maybe it's easy. Maybe it's the first thing you try is it works, but maybe it's that you need this tweak. Maybe, I gave the BigQuery example. I think the tweak that we needed that pricing and packaging fix. We were selling something that was terrifying to enterprise customers. And when we gave them a flat rate option, then, that I think was what allowed us to get product market fit. Then you get product market fit, you're golden. And then it comes time to shut it down. And that can be also one of the hardest parts of a PM's job, is deciding when to shut it down. I just want to put this in because there's lots to show how many stakeholders there are. Like as an engineer, you think, oh, it's about engineering. And then, there's this other kind of small circle over here. At many organizations, these roles are much larger than engineering. Even, technical companies. Maybe to most of you, that's obvious. To me, it was a surprise. To me, it was, when I talked to Looker, I helped with the Looker acquisition, and they had something like 5 times more salespeople than they did engineering. I'm like, wow, that's that's surprising. And Snowflake, Snowflake, which is now valued, I'm not sure how many tens of billions of dollars, one of the BigQuery competitors, they had, I think at one point they had something like 100 engineers and 1,000 salespeople. That's just sort of, and then that doesn't even get into all these other people. These are all people that as a PM, you have to work with every day. All right. What do you need to know to be a PM in a few minutes or less? So first is the lingo. There's a lot of lingo that you can you're going to need to know as a PM. None of it is all that hard. Once you start to get it, it's easy. The ones that I find I use the most are gross margin. What's your margin is super important, and and the margin is basically the if you sell something for $1 and it cost 75 cents to produce, then your margin will be 25%. So it's an easy calculation, but it's also a great way to understand how much money you're making when you're getting revenue. And TAM is just another important one. What's the total addressable market? That's when you always want to know. You're starting a product. What if this is successful? Is this going into a $100 billion market, or is it going in? If I capture the entire market, is it only going to be $10 million? That's important. Of course, you have to watch out for the fallacies when you look at the market size. It's easy to say, lots of business plans show, the TAM of this is, I guess there's the old case where like there's 1 billion people in China. If I can just sell 1% of those people cars, then I would make a ton of money. Of course, like selling cars to 1% of the people in China is hard. And you're cutting out, why are they going to buy your cars, and why do you think you can do that? So what are some PM techniques for success? I mentioned it before, but it's influencing without authority is really, really important. And it's the difference between a PM and a CEO. And but I think that there's a reason that PMs are in a different reporting chain from the SWEs, because they're going to come up with a lot of ideas, and some of those ideas are going to be right, some of them are going to be wrong. And the way to kind of test those ideas is by trying to get them done and trying to influence people. Because if you could tell people if you could tell the salespeople, this is what we're going to sell, if you could tell the engineers this is what you're going to build, then you better be right. And the problem is, like, it's just hard to be right all the time. And so if you have to influence people, if you have to be like, hey, how would you feel about selling this? If you have to talk to customers, how would you feel about buying this? If you have to talk to engineers, like, could you build this? How long would this take to build? How hard would this be to build? And then you get enthusiasm, and you get momentum behind it. That's going to be a stronger product than if you just said, hey, look, this is what we're building, and nobody, everybody's afraid to say no. But there's the skills for doing that that are hard to get. The other one is dealing with ambiguity, and I think that this is one that being an engineering leader helps with. Becoming senior in engineering helps with, because as you start out in your engineering career, you work on relatively small, low ambiguity problems, and then as you kind of move up the food chain a little bit, even as an individual contributor, you're working on bigger, more complex things that are going to be ambiguous. If somebody says, hey, we need to build, this microservice that does this, but there's a lot of things that haven't been resolved, and you have to figure out those out, and those become part of your job. I think at least when I moved into management, one of the things I found was that the level of ambiguity jumps up, because people are a lot more like harder to understand than computers. And maybe that's just me, because that's how my brain works, is that, like, I identify with the computer always does what I tell it to. Like people do things that surprise you in good ways if you can harness it right. But so people, as a people management, there's a jump up in ambiguity, but as a PM, there's just a whole nother step in ambiguity, because you don't even know what the product is that you're building, and you don't know what, like, do we want to build a, I'll use an example from my current job, is like, do we want to go after the data warehousing market, or do we want to go after the transactional database market? Like, that's a big decision, and there's lots of ambiguity involved in that. And if we make a decision, there's not really a right answer. Like, so a lot of technical things, you can be like, there was a right answer for that. Like, this was the right design, but which ones of those should be, like, just because one was successful doesn't actually mean that it was right. Just because it wasn't successful doesn't mean that it was wrong. That can be hard. I talked a little about influence, and just because I think this is such a core skill to product managers. Influence is important, and how do you influence? Writing, presenting. Pre-gaming is I think an interesting one, where you're going to be meeting, but you don't know what the outcome of that meeting is going to be. So you kind of want to, find people out beforehand and say, hey, how do you feel about this? And if you can kind of get some allies, then, that can be useful to kind of to make something happen. And I also just want to say, like, as a PM, like, the kind of the worst thing, you never want to have to resort to arguing from authority, because that's going to backfire. Because when problems happen, and problems do happen, then you have no allies. If this sounds political, perhaps it is political, but really political is just about influence. Politics, Aristotle said politics is the highest form of art. And if there's something that you believe and you want it to happen, politics is a way that you can get the thing that you want to happen. So PMs have artifacts. As we call them at Google, is like just the documents that a PM writes. So starting with the vision doc. This is what my vision of the world is. This is what the world could look like. This is when people often accuse PMs of sort of waving their hands and being out of touch with reality. But really, it's like you're looking far into the future and thinking, what could it be? And often that's not where you get to, but that's not necessarily important. The important thing is actually finding that direction. The concept PRD, I think, is really important. Is you have an idea, like and this is really for testing ideas. It's sort of, I have an idea that we should do X, and you write up a doc, and sometimes you write up the doc and you realize, no, this isn't going to be right. But you get feedback, and it's a way to kind of get people behind an idea before you spend the time to write a full PRD, which is like, you do market analysis and modeling and the full blown argument. And this is what all the things that it should have in it. Full PRD is a really important tool in the toolkit of a product manager. But you shouldn't just, because it can be very heavyweight, you shouldn't just embark on it willy-nilly. The other thing is financial modeling can be important. As they say, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And building a model can, of like, if we are successful, what is our revenue going to look like, can let you know, are we going to make money at scale, or are we going to not make money at scale? For example, when the first pass of BigQuery Omni, which is our multi-cloud version of BigQuery, we did the financial modeling and realized, hey, this is not actually going to work. We had to change what our plan was going to be. I think we're running a little short on time, so I'll just go briefly over the last couple slides. But strategy is something that I didn't understand at all as an engineer. I thought strategy was, thinking big picture, thinking strategically. We're going to be the best is not a strategy. In fact, it's an anti-strategy. It's pointed as like, don't do this, because like, you have no defense against competitors if you're just going to be the best. you're going to be just a slightly bit better. And if you stop running, or if you get it a little bit wrong, then you're toast. You need to, strategy is how you build barriers around your competition. Those barriers could be, either switching costs or network effects, et cetera. How do you make sure that, your competition doesn't come and eat your lunch. I also want to mention that there are other ways to get to PM that are technical that work really well. So I've some of the best PMs that I know started out as sales engineering, because they really understand customers, they understand the market, they understand the business side of things. The one thing that can be hard for them is thinking about what could be, going beyond what customers are asking for, and what do they need. Support engineers often are great product managers as well. We have a great support engineer at Single Store. One thing that can be helpful is, at Google we had this, it was a rotation program, and I think other places implement this, which is if you're in another role, you spend a few months as an engineer or as a product manager to give it a try, because some people take to it really well, and some people don't. But this kind of lets you do it without making a commitment to a career switch. A couple of book recommendations. I'm a big reader. My wife's a bookseller, and the 7 Powers talks about strategy. These first 2 books are about strategy. The hard thing about hard things. Ben Horowitz talks about how kind of hard it is to run a company, but I think he was a product manager, and he's you get to see why being a product manager is difficult. Influencing people, and then the last one is how to be a good writer. Last thing is last bits of parting advice for the aspiring PM. The first one is innovate. You're going to be able to do things that other people can't. Leverage that, but don't try to be an engineer. Focus on the what, but not how. Use the non-engineering folks. So this is one I'm still not good at, which is, there's all these people in marketing, there's all these people in sales, in the field, and these other parts of the organization. They've got really good opinions, and you need to get their buy-in and get their solicit their feedback, because if you don't, you're going to be missing out on a big part of your potential and what the product can and should be doing. Maintain a growth mindset. A mindset of you can always learn, and you can always get better, and you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And make more mistakes. Maybe make them smaller, maybe not. Maybe make them bigger. There are many paths to becoming a product manager. I have described one that I took, and I think your path may be different. But last but not least, I've made a PM job seem stressful. It's not. I mean, it is stressful, but it's fun. I wouldn't go back. I don't think I could go back. Just after seeing how the world actually works, it would be hard to go to put the genie back in the bottle. But so enjoy your journey to product manager. Have fun. I want to hear about it. Please feel free to ping me and let me know how it goes.
Super. That was fantastic, Jordan. I think, essentially the first part of the presentation, when you synthesized your journey into learnings, is where it symbolizes that, life is too short to make all the mistakes. So go and do your own mistakes, learn from the others for things, right? So superb. I think, we're already at the top of the hour, but there are lots of really great questions. So we'll probably take a couple of them. But is there a way that people can reach you and ask you a question? Is it LinkedIn or Twitter that you just showed? Can they reach you on Twitter or LinkedIn? Which one would you prefer for people?
Yes, either one. LinkedIn is great. Send me a LinkedIn message. Send me a LinkedIn connection. Also Twitter. I think my direct messages are open there.
Super. I think one of the things that I found really amazing about this session is you kind of preempted a lot of questions. With every subsequent slides, I could see there were questions coming in. Oh, okay, this got answered. So we'll pick a couple that I thought we didn't cover, or you can bring it. And these questions mostly around the transition, right? So I'll kind of combine the questions from few people, including Sumanas, Ramkumar, and Madhu. They're saying, we believe that we may have the product management skills or the mindset because either we are going through some program or some learning or any of those things. But what if the organization doesn't have an opportunity for engineers to move into product management, right? So, and if you're looking at outside, right, some other company, do you have any tips how to present ourselves as somebody with PM skills and PM mindset? Also, does having an MBA help? Is Madhu specifically asking?
Sure. So I think if there's no PM role, I think often as an engineer you can sort of step into be a product focused engineer. You can start to take on some roles. You could write a PRD. Again, it's also influencing without authority is important, and you can start doing that as an engineer on the product, and you can start building those skills. I don't think you need an MBA. I think that I don't have an MBA. An MBA is useful. I think you learn a lot in an MBA. Some places some places do have it. It can be harder to get to higher levels of the org chart without an MBA, but I think if you can do it and you can do the job and you do it well, I don't think it's required. And you commit to learning. There's the official learning, and then there's the kind of the actual learning, and sometimes those are different.
Yeah, absolutely. Vatsalya is asking, in your journey, are there any specific skills related to business acumen that are important for someone to pick up in that path?
So the business acumen, I do think that strategy is important, and like understanding business strategy, and then also financial modeling, like being able to do projections of understanding your costs, understanding your COGS, understanding projecting out what is going to be what's your best case, what's your worst case, and what are the sensitivity analysis. So understanding hey, I don't know this number, I'm going to pick a number, but if you're wrong, are you wrong? But does the output change by a little bit, or does the output change by a lot?
Super. Well, I think that's about the time that we have. Again, really thank you and appreciate you taking the time in the morning to share your insights and your journey and do's and don'ts with us. So if you could just hold on for a minute, we will quickly conclude on this. The best question today goes to Vatsalya. I think that was a really relevant and pertinent question that you asked. Congratulations. Please, the team will reach out to you and give you an access to the guided learning. Really quickly, we can move on to the next one. I think one of the main reasons why we have IPL conducts this festival is to build and nurture a community of product professionals. So there is a very thriving, active community here, community.productleadersforum.org. So feel free to scan the QR code, join the community, share information, learn from each other. There are lots of C-level executives in products also there who can give you some guidance on it. The other one is a pretty exciting one, at least to me. This is driven by the alumni of IPL. It's a short survey, so it takes about 10 minutes for you to help us understand the state of product management in this country. It's a benchmark study, so once you take it, you'll essentially get a nice report giving you information about the landscape of product management, the salary ranges, the day-to-day activities of PMs, and what are hiring managers looking to hire in product roles, right? Whether you come from engineering, customer support, or sales engineering, or any of those things. With that, Jorgen, please accept a small token of appreciation from all of us as a thank you, and really appreciate you joining us at this time. And thank you again. See you tomorrow, folks. Over to you, Shama.
Thank you, Jordan, for the brilliant session. Really great insights. And thank you, Sai Satish, for facilitating the session. So, audience, tomorrow is yet another amazing session by Timar Gillard. He is a product management coach at Product Front, and do not miss out on the session. Please join us at the same time, 8 o'clock tomorrow. I request you all to take a few seconds to answer this poll. So this is a feedback poll, guys. Your feedback is critical to us, and it helps us make improvements for the next round of the festival. All right, audience, thank you for sharing your feedback. Thank you for joining in, and I'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. With that note, I end tonight's session. Happy learning and stay skilled. Have a great night.